There are certain nights when the human heart goes very quiet, not because love is gone, but because it is sitting in silence, unsure how to speak without being misunderstood. And if these words have reached you, maybe a part of you is tired of pretending you don't care anymore, while another part still secretly hopes that somewhere, someone is holding on to you just as tightly. Because the truth is, someone may love you more deeply than you realize, not in loud or perfect ways, not in movie-style moments or flawless timing, but in confusion, hesitation, and emotional distance that hides fear rather than lack of feeling. Stay with this because this part matters more than it looks. Some hearts don't stop loving when they go quiet. They go silent because they are overwhelmed, not because they are empty. Silence can be a shield, a last attempt to protect something that feels too intense to handle. When real emotional connection shows up, it doesn't only bring comfort. It also exposes fear, old wounds, and memories people never fully healed from. So a person can feel deeply connected to you and still pull away at the exact moment you want reassurance the most. It feels confusing, even painful, but internally it often comes from overload rather than absence. One part of them moves toward you, while another part steps back asking, "What if I get hurt again?" And this internal conflict creates distance that looks like rejection but feels nothing like indifference. Many people were never taught how to hold real emotional closeness. They learned how to survive disappointment, how to stay strong, how to hide what they feel, but not how to safely receive love when it finally arrives. So when someone becomes important to them, their emotions start reacting in ways they don't fully understand. Your presence starts affecting their mood. Your silence feels louder than expected. Your attention becomes something they depend on more than they admit. And that dependence creates fear. Because once someone can affect your inner world that deeply, the risk of losing them suddenly feels very real. So instead of leaning in fully, they hesitate. They send mixed signals without even planning to. Warm one moment, distant the next. Not because the feeling is fake, but because the emotion is too strong to handle cleanly. And yes, this is where many people misread the situation completely. Stay with this thought, because it changes everything. Emotional distance is not always a sign of lost love. Sometimes it is a sign of emotional overload. Some people become cold because they don't care anymore, but others become distant because they care more than they know how to carry. Their heart moves forward, their fear pulls them back. They remember small details about you without trying. They feel your absence more than they expected, and yet something inside them still resists full closeness. This is what unresolved emotional fear often looks like in real life. Not dramatic, not obvious, but quiet and inconsistent. And the hardest part is this: they may not even understand their own behavior. The mind wants connection, but the body reacts as if connection is danger. So they pause, withdraw, return, and repeat the cycle without clear control. If you have ever felt that strange mix of closeness and distance from someone, you already know how heavy it can feel. Not everything that feels like letting go is actually letting go. Sometimes it is just fear sitting between two people who still feel something real: emptiness. Sometimes silence is not emptiness at all. It is the mind working quietly in the background, processing emotions that are too heavy to speak out loud. Some people express what they feel immediately, while others go inward when emotions become intense. They withdraw into thought, confusion, and inner conflict, especially those who have spent years holding back vulnerability. Their silence is not always rejection. Sometimes it is emotional protection, a way of surviving feelings they do not fully understand. But this is where misunderstandings begin. One person reads silence as distance, while the other is simply trying to stay emotionally stable. One feels ignored, the other feels overwhelmed. And slowly, without realizing it, two people who still care start drifting apart. Not because love disappeared, but because fear became louder than communication. Stay with this because it explains more than you think. This is why many people walk away too early. They mistake emotional complexity for emotional absence. They expect love to always look clear, stable, and easy to read. But real emotional connection is rarely simple. It reaches into deeper layers of identity. It activates parts of the mind people normally keep hidden. The insecure parts, the wounded memories, the fear of not being enough, the need for reassurance that was never fully healed. In deep connections, another person unknowingly touches those hidden layers. And suddenly, emotions become stronger than expected. It does not always feel peaceful. Sometimes it feels overwhelming, even scary. So a person may love you and still pull away, not because they do not care, but because caring itself feels too intense to handle in that moment. One part moves closer, another part steps back asking, what if this ends badly? And that inner conflict creates confusion on the outside. People do not always understand their own reactions. They might miss you deeply while acting distant. They might replay your conversations in their mind at night but appear completely fine during the day. They may want to reach out but stop themselves because pride, fear, or emotional confusion gets in the way. And this is where misinterpretation grows. You start thinking they do not feel anything while internally they are struggling with too much feeling at once. Emotional distance is not always emptiness. Sometimes it is overload. Sometimes it is a nervous system trying to protect itself from getting hurt again. There are people who withdraw not because they stopped caring, but because caring too much activates old fear patterns they never resolved. If this feels familiar, stay with it, because this pattern shows up more often than people admit. And here is something important you cannot ignore. Understanding someone's emotional struggle does not mean you should lose yourself in it. Love alone is not enough when emotional patterns remain unhealed. You cannot fix another person by overgiving, over-explaining, or waiting endlessly for them to change. Real connection requires effort from both sides. Compassion is important, but so are boundaries. You can understand someone's fear without abandoning your own emotional needs. You can care without sacrificing your peace. Mature love does not chase endlessly or collapse under uncertainty. It stays grounded even when emotions are unclear. And sometimes the healthiest choice is not to force clarity, but to allow space for truth to surface naturally, because no one changes from pressure alone. Change happens when a person finally becomes tired of repeating the same emotional cycle. Think about this carefully. There may have been moments when you already sensed the truth before anything was said. Small signals, changes in tone, emotional distance you could feel even when words said otherwise. Human intuition often notices emotional shifts long before logic understands them. That is why some connections stay in your mind for a long time, not because everything was perfect, but because something inside you was awakened, something emotional, something deeper. And awakening is rarely comfortable. It often comes through confusion, longing, silence, and unanswered questions that force you to reflect on yourself more than the other person. And maybe that is what this experience was always meant to do. Not just to connect you to someone else, but to show you what is happening inside you when love becomes real, complicated, and uncertain. They tried holding it down. They tried pushing it away. But feelings like this do not disappear just because someone suppresses them. They stay, they echo, they wait in silence. Comment, yes, if you have ever felt someone pulling away while still feeling emotionally present at the same time. Because maybe what is happening here is not absence at all, but inner conflict. A slow realization building inside them that real connection cannot live forever behind pride and silence. At some point, every person reaches a breaking point where loneliness starts feeling heavier than vulnerability. And in that moment, things begin to shift. Not suddenly, not cleanly, but slowly, almost painfully. They start noticing their own emotional patterns. The walls they built, the distance they created, the way fear quietly made decisions for them without permission. And while this inner change begins in them, you are still living your own experience. And this is where you must be careful. Do not let uncertainty break your self-worth. Do not let someone else's confusion make you believe you are hard to love. The way a person reacts to closeness often reflects their internal emotional world more than your actual value. Many people pull away not because someone is not enough, but because emotional intimacy activates fear inside them. Fear of needing someone, fear of losing control, fear of being seen too deeply. And strangely, the more they care, the more vulnerable they feel, and the more they retreat. It becomes a cycle inside them. One part wants closeness, the other part resists it. Desire pulling forward, fear pulling back. And without awareness, they stay stuck in that push and pull for a long time. But here is something you cannot forget. You cannot carry the emotional weight of two people forever. You can understand someone and still protect your peace. You can care about someone and still choose yourself. Compassion should not become self-erasure. Real love does not require you to shrink, wait endlessly, or lose your emotional balance. Love should not slowly erase your identity. It should not make you question your worth every day. And still, yes, there are rare connections where two people slowly learn how to meet each other emotionally, where fear becomes something they talk about instead of act on, where distance turns into understanding instead of disappearance. But those connections only grow when both people choose honesty, accountability, and emotional courage. Without that, even strong feelings remain stuck in cycles of confusion. This is where inner work becomes important, not as a concept, but as a real psychological process. It means facing what you usually avoid, the fear you deny, the insecurity you hide, the loneliness you distract yourself from, the emotional patterns you repeat without noticing. Until someone is willing to face those inner layers, relationships often repeat the same pain in different forms. And maybe this is what is happening on their side right now. Maybe your presence brought something out of them they can no longer ignore. Something real, something uncomfortable, something that forces reflection, because people do not struggle emotionally like this over something meaningless. When there is nothing real, there is no inner conflict. It feels flat, simple, easy to walk away from. But when feelings are real and fear is also real, everything becomes complicated inside them. You have probably already felt it too. That strange pull, the inconsistency, the emotional tension that cannot fully be explained. And maybe you have doubted yourself because of it, wondered if you are imagining things. But emotional intuition is rarely random. The mind notices what words do not say. Still, intuition must be grounded in reality, because emotional intensity alone is not proof of healthy love. Sometimes emotional chaos creates attachment that feels powerful but unstable. The nervous system can become addicted to uncertainty, confusing intensity with connection. This is why healing changes what people are drawn to. Calm stops feeling boring. Consistency starts feeling safe instead of unfamiliar. And emotional confusion no longer feels like depth, it feels like exhaustion. And maybe this experience is slowly guiding you toward that shift without you even realizing it yet. Losing someone forever often doesn't happen in a single moment. It happens slowly, quietly, in pieces. And sometimes they only realize it later, when silence itself becomes the reason they could not hold on. Do not underestimate how deeply human beings feel emotions they struggle to express. Some of the most powerful love stories are never spoken out loud. They live underneath restraint, hesitation, and emotional control. Not because restraint is ideal, but because people are shaped by their past while still wanting to be loved in the present. That contradiction is what makes love feel both beautiful and painful at the same time. Two emotionally tired souls trying to trust each other while carrying invisible wounds. Two nervous systems reacting to different kinds of pain. Two inner selves silently asking the same question without saying it. Will you still stay if you truly see who I am underneath all this? Because beneath pride, beneath silence, beneath emotional distance, there is often just a human being afraid of not being enough. Many people do not say this directly, but they quietly assume they will eventually disappoint the ones they love. So instead of risking full closeness, they step back first. They create space before loss can happen on its own. It becomes a hidden form of self-protection. If I don't get too close, maybe it will hurt less when it ends. But love does not follow that logic. Even protected love still hurts. Even silent love still carries weight. Even unspoken emotions still leave marks on the heart. And over time, carrying feelings that are never fully expressed becomes exhausting. The heart gets tired of holding everything inside. If you have ever loved someone who kept pulling away, you know this feeling. The confusion, the waiting, the emotional tension that never fully settles. And this is why emotional honesty matters more than emotional performance. Not manipulation, not confusion, not mixed signals, but simple truth. The kind of truth that says, I am afraid, but I care. I don't fully understand myself, but losing you feels real. I struggle to express this, but you matter to me. Those small moments of clarity can change everything between two people. And if someone reaches that point of emotional honesty, the entire connection can shift into something real and stable. But until that happens, you cannot lose yourself in waiting. Your life cannot pause inside someone else's confusion. You have to keep moving forward, keep healing, keep building emotional strength that does not depend on another person's readiness. Because your worth does not decrease just because someone is internally conflicted. You are not too much. You are not difficult to love. You are not asking for something impossible when you want clarity, consistency, and emotional presence. Those are basic human needs in love. Do not let someone else's emotional struggle make you question your reality. Healthy love is not perfect, but it should feel safe enough to breathe in. It should not constantly feel like decoding silence or guessing emotions. And one day, whether with this person or someone else, you will experience a connection where nothing needs to be interpreted all the time, where care is not hidden, where emotions are not constantly delayed, where two people stop pretending they are unaffected by each other. But before that future arrives, this present moment still has meaning. Maybe it is teaching you something. Maybe it is showing you the difference between attachment and real emotional alignment. Maybe it is revealing how much you have been ignoring your own needs just to keep a connection alive. Sometimes people only understand what they deserve after experiencing what they should not accept. And even if someone truly loves you, love alone is not enough without emotional growth. People often only become fully honest when they feel they are about to lose something important. That is one of the hardest truths about human change. It often comes late, but it does come. So protect your peace. But do not close your heart completely. Stay open, but stay aware. Stay kind, but stay grounded. And if your heart still feels connected in ways your logic cannot fully explain, acknowledge that feeling without letting it control you. Not every silence means absence. Not every distance means lack of love. Sometimes it is fear, sometimes it is confusion, sometimes it is two people still trying to figure out how to meet each other emotionally without losing themselves. And if this story reaches something inside you, remember this gently. You deserve love that does not confuse your self-worth. You deserve presence, not uncertainty. And maybe one day, you will look back at this not as the moment love disappeared, but as the moment you finally learned how to recognize what real love should feel like. Losing someone forever often does not happen in one clear moment. It happens slowly, in silence, in small emotional distances that grow over time until there is nothing left to hold on to. And sometimes, only later, people realize the truth. That silence itself was not protection, it was the beginning of loss. Do not underestimate how deeply a human heart can feel something it cannot express properly. Some of the strongest emotional bonds are never spoken out loud. They exist in hesitation, in pauses, in unfinished words, in the space between two people who both feel something but do not know how to fully show it. Not because restraint is perfect, but because human beings are carrying emotional histories while still trying to love in the present moment. And this is where love becomes both beautiful and painful at the same time. Two people trying to connect while carrying invisible emotional weight. Two nervous systems shaped by different experiences. Two hearts silently asking the same question without ever saying it directly. Will you still stay if you truly see the parts of me I hide from the world? Underneath pride, underneath silence, underneath emotional confusion, there is often something very simple and very human. Fear. Fear of not being enough. Fear of being misunderstood. Fear of getting too close and losing control over emotions. Many people do not openly admit this, but they often expect that they will eventually disappoint the person they care about. So instead of waiting for that pain, they create distance first. They step back emotionally before anything can break them later. It feels like safety, but it is actually avoidance. And love does not survive well inside constant avoidance. Even when someone is deeply cared for, silence still creates pain. Emotional distance still creates confusion. And over time, carrying feelings that are never expressed becomes exhausting. The heart begins to feel heavy from everything it was never allowed to say. If you have ever loved someone who was present one moment and distant the next, you already know this feeling. The overthinking, the waiting, the emotional guessing that never fully ends. Stay with this thought because it reveals a pattern many people live through but rarely understand clearly. This is why emotional truth is more powerful than emotional performance. Not games, not confusion, not mixed signals, but simple honesty. The kind of honesty that says, I am afraid, but I care. I don't fully understand my emotions, but you matter to me. I struggle with closeness, but I don't want to lose you. Those small moments of truth can change the direction of a connection completely. But until that level of honesty arrives, you cannot lose yourself in waiting. Your life cannot stay paused inside someone else's emotional confusion. You have to continue building yourself, healing yourself, and protecting your emotional balance. Because your worth does not decrease just because someone else is internally unstable. You are not too much. You are not difficult to love. Wanting clarity and consistency is not asking for something extreme. It is asking for emotional safety. And real love should feel like safety, not constant uncertainty. One day, whether with this person or someone else, you will experience a connection where you are not always decoding silence, where affection is not hidden behind fear, where emotional presence feels natural instead of uncertain. But before that future arrives, this experience still has something to teach you. Maybe about your emotional needs, maybe about your boundaries, maybe about the difference between attachment and true connection. And even now, there is something important you should not ignore. Not every silence means absence. Not every distance means lack of love. Sometimes it is fear. Sometimes it is inner conflict. Sometimes it is two people still trying to understand themselves while feeling something real for each other. But understanding this should never make you forget yourself in the process. Protect your peace, but do not close your heart completely. Stay aware, but stay soft. And if your heart still feels connected in ways your logic cannot fully explain, acknowledge that feeling without letting it control your decisions. Because real emotional awareness is not just about understanding others, it is also about not losing yourself while trying to understand them. And maybe one day, you will look back at this chapter not as the moment everything fell apart, but as the moment you finally learned how love should and should not feel. Losing someone forever does not usually happen in one clear ending. It happens slowly, in quiet moments, in emotional pauses that never get repaired. And often people only understand it later when the silence has already done its work, when words that were never spoken become heavier than the ones that were. Do not underestimate how deeply a human heart can feel something it cannot express. Some of the strongest emotional connections never become fully visible. They exist in hesitation, in delayed replies, in unfinished conversations, in the space between two people who both feel something but are afraid to fully show it. Not because restraint is ideal, but because every person is carrying emotional history while still trying to love in the present. And that is where love becomes complicated, beautiful, but also painful. Two people trying to understand each other while also trying to protect themselves. Two nervous systems shaped by different experiences. Two hearts, silently asking the same question without saying it out loud. Will you still stay if you see everything I try to hide? Underneath silence, underneath pride, underneath emotional confusion, there is often something very simple. Fear. Fear of not being enough. Fear of being misunderstood. Fear of getting too close and losing emotional control. Many people never say this directly, but they quietly assume that one day they will disappoint the person they care about. So instead of waiting for that moment, they create distance first. They withdraw emotionally before anything can break them. It feels like protection, but it is actually avoidance dressed as safety. And love struggles inside that space. Even when feelings are real, silence creates confusion. Emotional distance creates overthinking. Inconsistency creates emotional exhaustion. And slowly, without realizing it, a connection starts becoming harder to hold. If you have ever loved someone who felt close one moment and distant the next, you already know how draining it is. The constant guessing, the emotional waiting, the unanswered thoughts that repeat at night. Stay with this, because it explains a pattern many people experience but rarely understand clearly. This is why emotional honesty matters more than emotional intensity. Not mixed signals, not emotional confusion, not temporary closeness followed by distance, but simple truth. The kind of truth that says, I am scared, but I care about you. I don't fully understand myself, but I don't want to lose you. I struggle with closeness, but your presence matters to me. Those small moments of clarity can completely shift a relationship. But until that level of honesty exists, you cannot lose yourself inside waiting. Your life cannot stay stuck inside someone else's emotional uncertainty. You have to keep moving forward, keep healing, keep protecting your inner stability, because your worth is not defined by someone else's emotional readiness. You are not too much. You are not difficult to love. Needing clarity, consistency, and emotional presence is not asking for something unrealistic. It is asking for basic emotional safety, and real love should feel safe enough to exist without constant confusion. One day, whether with this person or someone else, you will experience a connection where you are not always decoding silence, where affection is not hidden behind fear, where emotional presence feels natural and steady instead of uncertain and unpredictable. But before that future arrives, this experience still has meaning. It is shaping you in ways you may not fully see yet. Maybe it is teaching you to recognize emotional patterns more clearly. Maybe it is showing you where you abandon your own needs for the sake of connection. Maybe it is revealing how easily emotional inconsistency can become mistaken for depth. And even if someone truly cares about you, love alone is not enough without emotional awareness and growth. People often only become honest when they feel they are about to lose something important. That is one of the hardest truths about human change. It usually arrives late, but it can still arrive. And while that possibility exists, you still have to protect your peace in the present. So stay open, but stay grounded. Care, but do not disappear into someone else's confusion. Understand, but do not abandon yourself in the process. And if your heart still feels connected in ways your logic cannot fully explain, acknowledge it without letting it take control of your decisions. Because real emotional maturity is not just about understanding others, it is about not losing yourself while doing it. And maybe one day you will look back at this chapter and realize it was not just about losing someone, it was about learning what love should feel like and what it should never make you become.